Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Well, hello and welcome to the Actual Anarchy podcast where we talk about movies from a Rothbardian anarcho-capitalist perspective. Tonight, we're going to be going to the Christmas town of Bedford Falls and get into a movie by the Jimmy Stewart, Frank Capra combo platter, black and white style, served up. It's a Wonderful Life. It's going to be great. We're going to talk about bells ringing and angels getting their wangs. And before we get into that, I just want to mention that this is episode 160 of the show, and we wish you a Merry Christmas. And I also wish my buddy and co-host, Robert Paul Johnson of Trubster.com, a white Christmas. You're in a blizzard right now. Thank you for joining us. How are things going on your side of the mountains and in business?
So this squall is your fault, I see. No, it's terrible. I hate it. Back in the day when I had nothing to do, you know, when you're a teenager or whatever, you just want school to not happen. You're rooting for the snow, but when you actually have to get shit done, yeah, it's a nightmare to deal with. Driving like 30 miles an hour on the freeway, it's awesome. But business itself is doing really well. Yeah, we got a big day tomorrow. And hopefully people will come out and support us as we serve them a lot of great Thai food.
All right. Well, nothing says Christmas quite like the Thai food. So I applaud you on doing fine work over there and continuing to grow record-breaking numbers and providing a valuable service in an area that has an opportunity for such good quality food to be served up, because no one was really doing that over there. So I applaud your efforts. Entrepreneurial spirit all the way.
We're just serving our fellow man, much like old Georgie Bailey.
That's right. Now, hopefully,
and old Mr. Potter.
Hopefully, you run a business better than Old Bailey there, and we'll get into that during the last portion of the show, which we can get into if you're down. We'll introduce our guest.
I am halfway down.
All right. Well, we will be with you guys in just a moment here. Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Johnson, the Last Nighters, and the Last Nighters wish you a Merry Christmas and are also found on the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. Check it out at thelaunchpadmedia.com. Tonight, we're going to be doing It's a Wonderful Life on episode 103 of the show. You can find show notes and more at lastnighters.com/103. And if you like what we do here, you can also hit us up on the old Patreon at lastnighters.com/Patreon. Our guest is our pal Mike C., and he joins us for a little Jimmy Stewart flick called It's a Wonderful Life. We'll get into this one. And I have a sneaking suspicion, or at least I did, that Robert wasn't going to like this movie, but apparently in pre-show bonus content, which is available for our Patreon supporters, he let it slip. The cat's out of the bag. He actually does like this movie, so it might just be three guys agreeing with each other tonight. But, you know, maybe it'll work out. Maybe we'll see. But we will make sure to ring that bell several times to make sure that the wings get redistributed appropriately. So, Mike C., welcome. You're a musician, a friend of the show. You've been on numerous times. We will have a full complement of your previous appearances at our show notes page, lastnighters.com/103. And your musical website is on SoundCloud, and it is called Mechanical Dream Revolution. And you've been putting in the hours, sir. The labor theory of value is serving you well, throwing in all that value. And I don't know how much compensation you're getting for it, but I certainly appreciate the music that you're putting together. It's got a lot of narrative, a lot of story. And it's probably not for everybody, but I will post a link to it on the show, and I hope people do check it out because it's pretty good stuff. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
What it is. Merry Christmas. Salutations. How's things?
Things are good. Good.
Right now, yeah, it's not a bad night for it.
Is there an easy way to find you on the SoundCloud? Do they just go to SoundCloud and put in Mechanical Dream Revolution?
Yeah, I mean, ideally I come up. Mechanical Dream Revolution, all one word. If you got a link in the show notes, that helps. And then slowly you get more traction as you get more views and stuff, right? It's just like anything else.
Yeah, and you know what I
Um,
could do? I can put together a link from our show directly to your SoundCloud profile page,
That sounds great.
lastnighters.com/Mike C.
Or I'll shoot you a link to the new album if you want. Album. I don't know if 7.5 hours is an album, but
It's a concept album, is what it is.
yeah, it's a season. But yeah, I'll shoot you a link to that. You guys can get it like a day early then, because it's dropping on Saturday.
Okay. Sounds good. Well,
there's
this
that.
show comes out Sunday and Monday, so it'll be up by then. So that'd be great.
Awesome.
So anyway, welcome.
All I got.
Welcome. Robert is here. You are here, and we're going to be talking about "It's a Wonderful Life." Now, this was a suggestion by you, and I think, like I was mentioning earlier, that you had brought up this potential episode in the hopes that Robert would dislike this movie, so that we would have a lot of banter and back and forth. But as was revealed earlier, he loves it.
I can't hate it. And I think I am actually genetically predisposed to like this. I don't know if you know this or not, Daniel, but my father, this is his favorite movie of all time. He's owned, the VHS tape, multiple DVD versions. I think he's got a Blu-ray version, which I don't even know if he has a Blu-ray player anymore. But he's gotten this as a gift, even though they show it on TV every year. All kinds of times, and he just absolutely loves it. This is one of the few movies that he doesn't fall asleep through. And so, yeah, I gotta say, I can see why he likes it so much. This is the first time I've ever seen it all the way through. I've probably seen the last 30 minutes like 20 times. And so I thought hey, I know the story. I'm going to watch this movie and won't be surprised at any time. And I wouldn't say I was really surprised, but I went on the full ride for the first time. And what a ride. A movie this old still holds up.
Well, we will see. Now, normally we start off with the Google description, so why don't I get into that? And then we'll get Mike's reaction and then yours. And then I'll run my mouth for a little bit.
That's how we do it.
That's how we do. All right, here we go. It's a Wonderful Life. It's a 1946 drama/fantasy film, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Originally shot black and white. It was originally presented in black and white. And that evil Ted Turner bought it, colorized it. And Jimmy Stewart went before Congress and was like, this is a bastardization of the original beautiful artistic sense of the film. So he was not down with the color. But it did get an 8.6 on the IMDb, 94% Rotten Tomatoes, 4 out of 4 by Roger Ebert. I guess he had 4 thumbs at the time. And 92% of Google users like it. The description is, George Bailey has so many problems. I want to say, and a bitch ain't one. He is thinking about ending it all, and it's Christmas. As the angels discuss George, we see his life in flashback. As George is about to jump from a bridge, he ends up rescuing his guardian angel, Clarence, who then shows George what his town would have looked like if it hadn't been for all his good deeds over the years. It came out, it says here, January 7th, 1947. In fact, the copyright on the title screen is 1947, but I believe it was actually released in December in 1946. Director Frank Capra, and of course has our pal Judge Jimmy Stewart in this one. So, Mike, your reaction, sir?
To the description? That's pretty accurate, I think. I think the mythos is that Capra was blacklisted for this, but I don't know if that's true. I think he just was associated with some commies in Hollywood and probably got interrogated or whatever. Yeah, it's pretty solid. I mean, A Fate Worse Than Death is his wife becoming a spinster. I think this is a great film. We can nitpick it though. I think we can nitpick it. I think it might.
Oh, that's what we'll do. We will nitpick.
Yeah. It might be fun to pull on a few threads of ridiculous plot contrivances and such, but no, it's pretty solid. I think Capra was a propagandist for America at one point, and I think that shines through in how he presents these ideas because they're vague. They're vague. They're hard to argue with. A lot of them are very feel good and nice. And yeah, I kind of bawl my eyes out every time I watch this in a single sitting. So
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
the second half of this movie, I was just crying like a baby.
Just
This
at the
movie
end.
does such a good job of connecting with the audience on an emotional level. It's what so many movies fail to do these
Yeah.
days. It's
No,
incredible.
he knocks it out of the park, I think. So whatever.
Yeah, in watching this again, and of course I've seen this bits and pieces here and there over the years. It's on TV constantly. But I haven't sat down and watched it through in probably 20 years. And watching it the other night, I was like, wow, they're really spending a whole lot of this movie setting it up. Like going into it, I expected him to do the whole, visited by three ghosts and go Christmas past pretty, like halfway through. But no, it was like 80% of the way through the movie. Like the actual him seeing what life would be like without him was very brief.
No, it's kind of inverted to a lot of modern plot structure, and even what a movie would have looked like back then, I think.
Yeah. No, it's all set up, almost all set up, and just the short little payoff at the end. But it hits you so much harder with all that setup, and
Yeah.
you're on board for the ride of who this guy is and what his life is like. That you're rooting for him the whole time.
Yeah. Now, Robert, you're really good with the narrative. So, what do you foresee in the setup? Like, why don't you run us through the kind of the story, and then what's the turn? What's the thing that puts him over the edge? Because I think that's pretty key.
Yeah, so it's the story of George, and George is a guy. He's got these big dreams, these massive aspirations. He wants to travel the world and do all these things, but he keeps getting pulled back to Bedford Falls. Not that he actually ever leaves, but it's like every time he's about to leave, something happens that makes it so he's like, oh, my ordinal scale, I have to do this instead of this other thing that I wanted to do. So he's just this guy that he's like this perennial like good guy. He's always like self-sacrificing. He's pulling the town together when there's a bank run, and he's saving. He's his whole goal in life is to like get homes built for his friends, and so he really sees himself as this kind of, I don't know if he sees himself as a self-sacrificing person, but that's what he ends up being in a way. But that's what we're all doing with capitalism in a way. I mean, we're all just kind of serving each other and helping each other out. But it's funny because then he sees this Potter guy as the enemy. Like he's this villain character when he's basically doing the same thing, except he gets to call Potter's houses slums, whereas his house, what was it called? Like, what was his name of his little housing development?
No, Bailey Fields or something like that.
Yeah, it's nice. He had a different approach to business, though, right? He had a better product, higher quality.
Yeah, I mean, he had nicer homes, sure, but anyway, narratively, so George is this guy that never gets to do what he wants, but in the end, he realizes that what he wanted, he was doing all along, and that there's nowhere he'd rather be, and how wonderful his life is.
The real treasure.
Go ahead.
Say it. No, I was gonna actually mock it, and it's funny because I love the film. So, no, it's it.
How dare you, Mike?
No, it's the real treasure, or the friends we meet along the way, or something like that, right? No,
yeah.
A man is never poor if he's got friends, right? So,
right, a man is not a
sappy,
failure
but it's
if
true.
he has friends.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is a great movie. It's hard to get my head around it because they're both kind of wrong and they're both right. Like, they had a different. The savings and loan had a different approach to their clients. They were a bit more hands-on, a little less rigid with their payment structure. Like, if somebody missed a payment or something, they wouldn't immediately foreclose on them and stuff. There's a little less rigidity in their relationships. So there's a factor in that you might decide to go to, as opposed to a more, safe or rigid bank that you're maybe going to get more money out of, or interest out of, or whatever, that might serve you a different kind of product, essentially, right? So it's good to have two competing businesses in that marketplace for savings and loan, right?
Now, my question is, if the Baileys had a lower cost, higher quality product, then why were they not winning in the marketplace? Why were they always seemingly on the verge of collapse and not having customers? Why were people even in the Potter slums and going to Potter if he was charging more for an inferior product?
I mean, did they have really lax payback structures, like just letting all these loans out there and not getting payments on them?
Well, they were very relaxed in if somebody said that they didn't have the money at the time, that they were like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Pay us when you can," that kind of a thing. And they made several references to only having very little money.
Yeah, so they were cash poor as a business, as a savings and loan. So they were kind of leveraged to the tits. I don't think they could get too much more, right? So that particular savings and loan worked for whatever 20, 10 years to be able to get just a development company going, right? Just to get those houses going, right? Whereas Potter had a vertically integrated, conglomerate. So he's providing a different service. So he can kind of infect the marketplace a little bit differently, with a bit more. He can bully the competition a little bit, I think, is what they're implying.
Well, was Potter,
I don't want to say monopoly, but
was he just renting out properties or was he selling them as well?
I think he's probably a slumlord is how they sort of portrayed him, right? So he's probably just renting things out, which is, again, yeah, it's exploitative to an extent, right? If you rent, your whole life, you kind of start going, oh, why am I paying somebody else's mortgage? Obviously, like, that's kind of a misnomer because there's a lot of benefits to renting.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
yeah,
a lack of liability for one, right? So
the ability.
Don't get into that too much, but you get the impression that, I don't know. It's like, you guys have Tim Hortons down there now?
No, but I'm familiar.
Well, I'm just thinking, I wanted to compare Starbucks and Tim Hortons because they're very similar structures, and one of them is a bit more bare bones and cheaper and a little bit like just starker as a product, and the other one, the Starbucks, is a bit more comfortable. And they're both like these terrible coffee fucking companies that have just infected everything in the marketplace, right? And so you can choose, and there's, especially up here, you get, there's the Tim Hortons people and the Starbucks people, and they kind of have their little factions, and they sort of wear it on their sleeve a bit. And so you choose whether or not you want a bit of comfort for a higher price, or if you want a more utilitarian model. So
right.
I'm kind of glad that they both exist.
Yeah, and anything in between or even below or above.
Yeah, and then there's the proprietorship where there's like some middle-aged woman that doesn't pay attention to you because she's busy talking to her friends from the neighborhood instead of running her business properly. That's my problem. Maybe I shouldn't be sharing that.
With like the local shops?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, this is why Starbucks has dominated the planet, because people that own fucking little businesses are like you. Just it's like, can I get?
Yeah, they're in it for something else.
Yeah. It's kind of just like a little public house and whatever. If they lack ambition, maybe that's what I've been bitching about my whole life anyway. So maybe that's good. People are slowing down a little bit.
Now,
yeah.
One of the things that's brought up in the description is how when George doesn't exist at all, having never been born, the town is far racier. Like there's girls and live shows and casinos.
Much more entertaining.
Yeah, a much more interesting landscape.
Well, not just that, and that's indicative of something very interesting, though, isn't it? That I think they tried to show that it was racier and like the moral decay under Potter. But what it really showed to me was how much wealth there was. I mean, all this entertainment existed. It must be being funded by people with a lot of spare cash to throw around. So there are people that have a lot of money to spend on entertainment. Yeah. So the town is demonstrably richer. So what's I think Potter gets a bad rap. I mean, unless Capra was just failed at, I mean, he's just trying to show the moral decay and not the financial decay.
Yeah, like the universe's rules don't make a ton of sense. They're a bit like, I don't know, Harry Potter or something, where magic just kind of fills in the gaps where you want. Like they don't. to say that it would go in that direction, I mean, it's possible, but like you said, you need money to spend on entertainment. So, but
Yeah, you got to have a lot of disposable cash, a lot of disposable income to go see the nude live dancing girls and the billiard halls and the dancing halls and all that stuff.
yeah, well, presumably people are less settled, so they're less invested in their community. They're having less kids, which are very cost ineffective products.
Yeah, so
They're quite the liability. So yeah, I'm assuming that the town, at a fundamental level, I guess we get down to it. It's basically people are not following like a natural path and like having kids and families and doing all those things, which are not going to produce the excess wealth to invest in frivolous strip clubs and gambling and pool halls and such. So I guess that's would be the takeaway.
That was more eating the capital on frivolous things.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that they had more capital, but they weren't investing it more wisely than they otherwise would have because of the moral rot.
So in that sense, Bailey becomes a beacon of that model of investing in your community, right? He's a leader of that kind of thought process, showing people a good example. So
okay, I can kind of buy this argument. So they may have more demonstrated spending on frivolities.
Yeah.
But it may be at the expense of more stable capital investment type.
Yeah, because everything George Bailey does in the movie is invest in people over and over, right? He suffers to basically put payments into people to keep them going, and then eventually that's why it kind of gets called socialist in a way, right?
Right, but
that's my. Yeah, I mean, I was just saying, is this an argument saying that socialism breeds humanity and morality? I think capitalism breeds debauchery and despair.
Well, the people analyzing the film say that. I don't think the film does. I think the film is more abstract than the politics that we sort of get bogged, or the economics that we get bogged down in. Because he says, basically the movie says you should invest in your community and you shouldn't, like Scrooge. It's very similar to the Christmas Carol in the sense that you should have some allowance in your thought process to see the value of the people around you and investing in your community and painting fences and fixing up old houses and stuff, instead of just buying new and spending all your money at a billiards club, or and using your neighbor through a financial system to the point of breaking them down isn't the best investment. The best investment is to create a job opportunity for them, and unless it's.
So you're saying that this is a version of capitalism done right versus a capitalism done wrong? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a version of America that people are nostalgic for in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, and I can see the other perspective of this being the caricature of what people think of socialism as people sharing and being nice, but that's actually capitalism.
Voluntarily.
Right. That's actually a capitalistic thing. That's people choosing to invest in or spend their money in certain ways that are more beneficial to others. That's not socialism. That is actual sharing. That is actual benevolence.
Yeah. So I think sorry.
What Bailey was actually doing, even though he was sort of poorly running a business, but he was providing, it seemed to be a bridge between people who could barely afford living in the slums of Pottersville. He was extending them rungs on a ladder to which to aspire to, so they would have a goal to save a certain amount of capital on their own in order to qualify for one of these loans from the Baileys, to be able to get into a home of their own and get out of these slums that Potter was running. So if anything, he was kind of that, he was bringing those two worlds together. He was offering them the ability to climb out of a hole so as long as they were actually working towards it. Like they had to have a certain amount of capital. They had to save a certain amount of money. Like they showed it with Martini, right? When he got a house and
he had a business.
Yeah, and the Baileys made a big deal about christening the house and saying some nice words. Here's bread so that this house never knows hunger and all that stuff.
That was cool, by the way. I thought that'd be cool if people still did that today.
Yeah, kind of this blessing the house.
Had rituals and parties and
a nice
talk to each other.
Yeah, reason to talk to neighbors
in person. Got together, instead of just all existing in like a bubble of entertainment. And well, I mean, we're phoning each other because we're in different places, but like a game of chess face to face with another guy is a pretty like specific experience, and you can't really do it online or looking at books or yeah. No, we're lacking ritual and celebration, and we don't build our culture from the ground up, which is, you can, that's personified, not personified, that's manifested in the film as basically like coming back to Pottersville, where everything, the entertainment industry is always so lucrative because our culture lacks community. So and it's beneficial not like a governmental level, but even for the larger companies, right? Like Coca-Cola is going to sell more Coke to people if they're lacking community, because it's poison and you really are only going to want so much of it unless you get feeling down. Does that
Very
make
much
sense?
like heroin.
Yeah, like it's very much like heroin, except it's way more legal and not quite as bad for you.
Right. And then also to go along with this, the Pottersville version, when Bailey doesn't ever exist, it's sort of like the rough parts of like Seattle or Vancouver, like East Hastings Street in Vancouver, or where what formerly First Avenue was in Seattle, where what was it called? The Lusty Lady?
Yeah.
Robert? Where they were like peep shows and all this stuff.
Well, you gotta ask me like I know.
Well, because you and we've been to Seattle a number of times, and I think it's gone now, but I just remember back, 20 some odd years ago, that part of town just south of Pike Place Market was a little bit seedy. And it had a lot of
I think that's where the Lusty Lady was.
Yeah, and it had a lot of similar things to the Pottersville scenario. And so I wouldn't say that was a demonstration of wealth. I mean, it was demonstration of frivolous spending, but it reminds me more of, because they don't have anything else that they would prefer to spend their money on, like in the Great Depression, which, by the way, in this movie they barely mention it. I thought it'd play a bigger role because this period of time was 1928 through 1940-ish, right, in the movie. But
I think the war is over by the time.
Well, he graduates in 1928, or his.
Yeah, but his brother comes back from the war, so it's probably like 1946 it's probably the year of the film's making by the end.
Yeah,
I'm assuming.
But I'll just close up my point. During the Great Depression, movie houses and other frivolities were a distraction or a diversion from the pains of everyday life, because everyday life was so much worse that those things actually didn't suffer as much. Like, people spent their money on those things because they didn't have other better things to spend the money on. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sort of like stumbling over this. Yeah,
it's an addictive response. It's the response of an addict at a societal level.
Right, to get a break or a relief, a respite.
It's like, oh, I'm stressed, I'm gonna have a drink, right? So
right, but isn't this all a little ridiculous to blame like the decay of a society on one guy? Like, it's all this Potter guy.
That is
the fact that
ridiculous.
George Bailey wasn't around to save us. We didn't have our Jesus character to come along and show us the right way, and all we got left is like this evil Darth Vader character who's gonna offer us rent.
What is it? There's a philosophical concept, right? Because, like, okay, so his brother dies because he wasn't there to save him, because presumably only Bailey could have saved him, or it only would have happened that way. That's an interesting idea, and we have to take it for granted because the film has decided that for its universe. So we have to adhere to those rules. So
right. No, I'm okay with that.
If anybody's the villain in this movie, it's Uncle Billy. Like, I don't even think
misplacing the $8,000.
Yeah. I mean, you should give back $8,000 from the community if somebody misplaced it, because it's technically not yours. It's not. There's not like a finders keepers thing.
Losers weepers policy.
Yeah, like I don't know if that. Where are you guys on the finders keepers, losers weepers for the NAP? How does that fit into libertarianism?
Well, I think Potter was really the villain right there. That was his key villain point, was when Uncle Billy actually accidentally gave him the money, and Potter realized whose it was and saw Billy, frantically searching for it. And I didn't understand this. Maybe you guys can explain it, but with the bank examiner, it made it seem like if they were short that money, they were going to go to jail for embezzling or stealing the money or something like that. It seemed like the risk versus the reward was really off kilter. Like
For what? For
was-
employing your uncle because he's an idiot that shouldn't have a job?
right, but Bailey was going to go to prison because of this. George was
Because it
Well,
was
there's
it's
liabilities,
probably
right?
seen as like embezzling other people's money, right?
Yeah.
Because they take the money on good faith, right?
Yeah, like if $8,000 goes missing, you don't just go like, "Oh, I don't know where it is." Oh well, right? And then like, well, okay, well, you've stolen from me. Then is the only explanation. If you can't give me a better story than that,
right. But Potter knew this, that he knew that it would mean prison time for the Baileys. So he was
Yeah, very
weaponizing
evil.
the state.
Sure.
By
He was
withholding the money.
absolutely. He was looking for leverage the whole movie to try and break down these Bailey
he didn't
boys.
wanna
And yeah,
compete.
he's absolutely.
he
He's
didn't want
absolutely the villain there, but he's not the villain before that. He's not responsible for the decay of Bedford Falls.
No, he was a dick though.
Yeah, he wasn't a nice
And he was-
guy.
He was
But he's just like-
antagonistic, and he used some very aggressive business tactics that have no place in a town that small.
I don't know what that means, but
Well, he
in
okay, so
defense
he's
of
offering to buy
Ebenezer
their shares.
Scrooge, when we defended Scrooge in A Christmas Carol,
Yeah.
I'll defend Potter in this
Yeah.
movie too.
No, I mean, you're right. They're both kind of wrong. I'm just saying that when there's a run on the bank, and then the only cooperative credit union in town that competes with you, you're offering to buy their shares for 50 cents on the dollar because you can just eat the cost to destroy your competition, is a shitty way to interact with your community. You shouldn't try to run your neighbor out of business.
You shouldn't make an offer?
I think you should compete. That just seems aggressive, right? It's just dirty pool.
To
I mean,
make
yeah,
an
if you
offer?
wanted-
They
if
don't
you
have to
wanted
take it.
Yeah, they didn't have to take it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. He had to convince, and then George had to convince everybody, like, "Hey, it's not worth doing that." But he did have to.
Potter,
and
in
he
the
just reinvested.
marketplace,
No, you're
Potter
right.
only has power insofar as much as he satisfies consumer demand.
No,
People
absolutely.
prefer Potter in the way he does business and the products he provides.
Yeah. No, and you're
So
right.
that's how
I'm
he
just
has
saying he's an
wealth.
asshole. I'm just
That's
saying
how he
that
has
he's a.
wealth, Michael. He didn't steal it. The movie implies that he steals the town or whatever. At least that's what George Bailey
George
says.
Bailey says that because he bought things for a song and dance because he had a lot of capital sort of hoarded away for when the market collapsed. And like we can go meta on that and talk about how like that was engineered or whatever or exacerbated by the government. But yeah, I'm just saying he's an asshole.
I'm not going to defend that he's not an asshole. I'm not going to say he's not an asshole.
But
I'm not
he's
going to say that.
a
And
servant.
he pays the dick price in this movie. Nobody likes him. How many friends does he have?
No, and he's
If he had
completely
the
yeah,
same
and he's
kind of
totally fine
problems
with
that
that.
George Bailey
you're right.
had, how many people would have come to his aid and go, "Oh, Potter, here, take some money"?
No, and he's gonna die alone and all that, right? And so that's the
Right.
entire point of the show. And you're right, like he's not the bad guy until he aggresses in a way that's like kind of truly evil. But he was very aggressive with his trying to acquire the savings and loan. Like he was antagonistic, and I don't know. Yeah, like obviously it's legal and it doesn't breach the NAP or anything like that. But I certainly don't condone that kind of behavior.
Right. And he couldn't defeat them without conniving and going
Yeah,
in.
and that's the thing. He didn't want to compete fairly, and that's what pisses me off about him. And he had like it's
He
like
competed fairly for like 30 years or however long that place was in business. It was only until he saw an opportunity when the guy gave him $8
No,
grand.
he
He's
played
like,
politics.
"Oh, okay."
he goes in and shows up to the board of trustees when George's father died and tries to get the savings and loan disbanded. He uses like rhetoric to try to change the course of the business. He
That's
doesn't
how
just
people use words.
yeah he did. Well, I'm just saying he didn't just quietly sit and provide a better product. He was aggressive, and he was political. So, and I don't know what kind of somebody like that, I'm pretty sure would be, doing stuff with the police and the politicians in that town as well. And,
Oh yeah, he'd be some sort of boss hog character probably.
yeah, he's a dick.
Some kind of
He's a
Tammany
dick.
Hall dude.
And I mean, yeah, like he's, it's like I'm not touching you, and you got your finger like 2 inches from somebody's face, and I'm like, yeah, okay, you're not touching me, but you are certainly upsetting me on purpose. So
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds a lot like what happens in my household with the two.
You're-
kids.
but yeah, no, I think Uncle Billy was the villain of this film.
Yeah, when they said that when Bailey wished that he didn't exist, they said Uncle Billy was put into an insane asylum.
Yes, sweet. There's, you know what? Get him. No, that's too far. He's certainly like, if there's one, I thought you guys would have had that criticism because, like after this event of him losing the $8,000 because he ties strings to his fingers instead of writing things down, I would hope that he retired after that, and that George filled that position with somebody that was worthy of it and could be accountable and take on that responsibility, because. Like Potter's right about a thrifty working class and not bailing people out of every situation. Like you do have to be very careful with tolerating like failure and letting people slide on their payments and things like that. Like you do have to run a business.
Are you against Yang's plan for $1,000 per month for every American?
I'd have to see it. I'm not against the idea of a negative tax. I don't know anything about it. All I know is he's promising
bribing you with your own money.
Well, yeah. He's bribing some people with other people's money, and that's what taxes do. So if it's a simplified version of that redistribution, it might be more efficient. I'm not sure. I'd have to see. I like the idea of a universal basic income in place of every other social program.
But that's never going to be the case. They're never going to take away the other social welfare shit.
But as an abstract,
just add it to the pile.
I don't write it off entirely. I think that maybe some bare bones infrastructure, social infrastructure, might be a good idea to transition us away from this, because a lot of people have been trained to not take care of themselves or be accountable, and to call the police so they can show up and shrug 3 hours after you've been assaulted. Like nobody's really taught these things, so we need a few generations to kind of get things to where we want them, right? That's
ideally, yes, but that sounds like a whole lot of. Never mind.
I'm assuming. Is it Yang? Is that his name?
Yeah, Yang Bang.
Yeah. I'm assuming that it's absolute lunacy, just off the cuff. But I haven't done any research, so I can't ethically.
It's a terrible idea.
It is lunacy.
Well, I'd have to see it. I don't know. Free education for everyone.
Well, on the speaking of free education, I'm going to throw a little free education out for people. Lastnighters.com/103. I'll have a Rothbard lecture on money and banking, where he talks about bank runs being one check against banks overextending themselves. And I'll also have a clip that I've actually made a cartoon version of Rothbard talking about the benevolent angel Gabriel giving everyone $1,000. He's like,
awesome.
Overnight, magically doubling everybody's bank accounts. What do you expect happens? The price of everything goes up by double. So everyone's no better off than they were, unless there's a time difference on who gets the money and when, which is like how the Federal Reserve works. It's the first receivers of the money who get the money before it impacts the inflationary aspects. And so they get to spend the money at today's price, but as the money finally makes its way through the rest of the economy, it starts to affect the raise of price, and the late receivers lose out.
Okay, how about this? You get a sea can for free. It's got a bicycle in it, and you have to bicycle for 4 hours a day, and that generates a bit of electricity. And in exchange for that labor, you get some food squares, some Soylent Green on Tuesdays, and you get a sea can that's made out of stainless steel, and you've got like a stainless steel bed with no clothes, like that gets sprayed out every day by a robot. Is that
Mike
that could work, right?
Like we're all gerbils running on a wheel.
Yeah, like and they'd be forced, they'd be forced to give back the labor that they're taking from the system by powering the bicycle, like in that episode of Black Mirror.
That sounds like the best use of everyone's time.
Yeah. Plus, you'd get a huge stimulus from all the bicycle building.
Oh yeah,
all the stationary bikes we'd have to build, right? And then the government could give some contracts to their friends that own factories that build stationary bikes. There's all sorts of benefits to this.
So much equality. It's just dripping
Oh.
with equality.
Speaking of banks, though, I hate them. But cooperatives structures, like, have you guys talked about that a lot on the show? Like how a co-op works and how it's different than a corporate structure? Are you guys for or against
You
that
can have a
sort of setup?
voluntary co-op. I don't
Voluntary
care.
co-op, but they
Go for it.
they rarely outcompete traditional businesses. But that's probably due to cronyism and protectionism that
That's
happens.
what I mean. Is I think that like how hard is it for a credit union to get like a charter, right? They don't get to give out student loans. Only certain banks do, right? That kiss the ring. So I don't know. I feel like that's a very good solution to the what people call the ills of capitalism, like with their fucking union killing and Walmart and destroying neighbor communities and stuff like that, and Amazon and Google owning everything. Like cooperative structures tend to have a lot of benefits in terms of like what people are looking for in a large organizational structure with some built-in checks to its rapid expansion and expanding to collapse, because I mean capitalism does thrive on chaos in a lot of ways, right? Like
Right.
it does.
There's so many distortions, and it's
Yeah.
hard to know what the proximate cause of anything is, and you can't really view these things in a vacuum.
No.
Until we make it to a fully free society, then we'd see which kind of structure would win out.
Well, that's why like anarchy and voluntarism or libertarianism is like, right? Because capitalism was coined by Marx. I think I said that the first time I was on the show. Like it's
a slur.
It's a slur. The whole point is to like poison the well of the conversation. Like you can't even have a conversation about it because, like, okay, so George Bailey, he's a capitalist though, and so is Potter. They're both
Everyone in the
capitalists.
movie is.
Yeah, like they're
Nobody's a volunteer, not-for-profit, whatever they do.
Yeah, he was just he was just better, and he was better at business than his father. His father, I think, wasn't very good at running it, and maybe he was being interfered with by Potter. But I think George was a much better businessman. I mean, aside from the plot device of having his uncle work there and be a total liability to this business model, which is ultimately like the deepest flaw in the film because everything revolves around this. And he's not like to the point of Potter, like you need to have consequences. So like, calling loans and charging interest is that consequence, but they take it too far on the one side, and then the other side doesn't have any fucking responsibility.
All right, there's a couple of things I wanted to get to before we have to wind down. And one of them is, let's talk about Clarence and the depiction of angels and them violating the Prime Directive and directly interfering with life on Earth. And then also I wanted to talk about, what's her name, Violet, and what was her role in this movie? What was the point of her?
To warn us.
Is she the girl in the red dress in the Matrix?
Yeah. She's just, I don't know what she is. I don't know. She feels like a cautionary tale. I think, okay, she's a bit wayward, right? So she needed she was rudderless and a bit like, I mean, they implied that she's not looking to put her roots down in any kind of way, which is a natural thing. And so she needed the guidance of Bailey to structure her life, right?
She seemed a bit of a floozy, and she got around.
Yeah,
but she seemed to desire Bailey, and she would drop the other guys that she was engaged with at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, multiple times.
If Bailey would give any interest in her direction. So was this a case of unrequited love? Similar to what the Donna Reed character also had with him, but he actually reciprocated with her?
I don't know.
She whispered in his bad ear that when she was a child, or at the soda shop or the pharmacy or whatever, that she was going to marry George Bailey, and he didn't hear her because his ear was non-functional.
Right.
So
I would say that
they both had designs on him ever since they were children.
Yeah, but she says to Violet, like, you like every boy. And she goes, "What's wrong with that?" That whole scene's hilarious, man. That guy's got some game. I wrote down, "Hey, brainless, don't you know where coconuts come from?" That is some like top tier pickup artist negging.
Yeah, yeah.
It
That
is.
is
No,
like,
it's-
that guy is like, he's like what, 10, and he's just like just banging it out, just killing it.
Yeah, and there were other moments later on, like throughout the film, where Bailey was demonstrating, I think, some behavior that would probably get you imprisoned today. Like he was violently shaking Donna Reed and then forcefully kissing her. And
Yeah, how do you court women?
I don't know. I don't. You just shake them till the
Yeah,
sandwich.
didn't you see Airplane?
Mm-hmm.
That's how you calm down.
Pickup artist 101 right there.
Yeah, just give them a shake. See if they try to run away or not.
Oh.
You know what? Though that's a touching scene, so don't even say anything about it. You're
Well,
right. Though, there's no way they would. No movie could be made now.
They would do that. Yeah.
Movies that were made 10 years ago can't be made now. Robert Downey Jr. blackfaced in Tropic Thunder.
Very well, I might add.
Yeah, no, it was knocked out of the park, man.
So I wanted to bring up the maid, the house maid that they had, the Baileys had, the black woman.
Sassy.
And what was it? Harry was the brother, and he slapped her on the ass. Now there was a recent like a marathon or fun run or whatever, and some reporter on the sideline was reporting from the event, and some guy ran by and slapped her on the ass and then kept going, and
Well played.
she claimed it was a sexual assault and he stole her power. And
Well, it was an assault. I don't know if we need an adjective attached to it. It's just an assault, but yeah.
I don't know, man.
He hit somebody, and apparently they didn't want him to, and she has every right to. You're right. It sucks, but it's a breach of
But
the
in terms of
non-aggression
proportionality,
principle.
Yeah, it wasn't like I'm trying to harm you, physically kind of assault. I don't know. And
No, but it's like you're not allowed to touch people that don't want to be touched, and it sucks that we don't have that. Like we have, I don't know. Maybe there's just too many people in too small of an area.
Well, Dave Smith talked about it on the Part of the Problem, his podcast, and I was a little surprised at his response because he's like, "Yeah, you can't do that. You can't." And well, I mean, part of me wants to disagree a little. Part of me wants
to. You can't do it.
People have.
Maybe you shouldn't. Would be a better way to phrase it if I want to get semantical, but.
But like 20, 30 years ago, it seemed to be like a, I don't know, somewhat socially acceptable, somewhat acceptable thing, and now it's not. I guess it's present year or whatever.
Yeah, well, a bunch of assholes at fucking music festivals ruined it just by being just too aggressive for too long, asking girls if they want to dance and being all handsy, and now all the awesome dudes have to adhere to a stricter code because.
Well, maybe it's more chivalrous, maybe more gentlemanly. So
yeah.
We're actually like culture a little.
No, I know what you mean. It's a movie, right? So they can settle that between each other. Like he slaps her on the ass, and you slap a reporter on the ass, she has every right to
complain,
to have you executed publicly. I guess is probably what the response was called for.
Yeah. Now, what was the other thing I said I want to talk about? Oh, the angels and depiction thereof. So, my wife and I, we have been watching Ancient Aliens, and then also the Pyramid Code, and it's got me all hot to trot to watch Stargate because it's all.
Oh, like the original movie or the series?
Yeah, the original.
Oh, that movie's great, man.
And we'll have you on for that in a couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever.
Because
I'm all hot for it, but yeah, watching Ancient Aliens, and there's the crazy guy. I've seen him in like 100 memes. He's got the wild hair and whatever. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Yeah.
He's like an executive producer of this thing. He's very prominently in this series. It's on Netflix. But basically, they're saying that all of these ancient cultures across the Earth, even though they were separated by thousands of miles, they all had some very similar things in their history or in their hieroglyphics or in their ancient like deciphering or their stories or whatever. And they were basically making the argument that what we now know of as religion is really just a retelling of aliens visiting the Earth and imparting this technical knowledge so that these ancient structures could have even been built, because a lot of them we would struggle to create even with modern day engineering and technology and all these things. And it just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of compelling and kind of interesting. But to see a very similar aspect, I felt in this movie, where they, the very opening scene is we're going out into space and these galaxies are talking to each other and they're angels.
I was waiting for the connection to this film.
There it is.
There it is. There it is.
All right.
Clarence is an alien.
Yeah, and then the light comes over, eh? The star comes over when Clarence comes over, and then he's flashing. Like he literally travels across the screen to.
Right, and he actually had been a living human like 250 years prior, because he said he's like 239 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of part of this ancient aliens thing, is that, or maybe it's the pyramid code that they say that this life on Earth is sort of like a training ground for, we are in a bit of a metamorphic state.
Ooh.
And when we die,
Yeah.
our essence or our spirit or whatever goes back into space. And so I mean, it's a bit depicted in this movie, so it's kind of interesting.
Bible is an acronym for basic instructions before leaving Earth.
I recall that song. Who was that?
Guru? No, it wasn't Guru.
Yeah,
It might have been Guru, actually.
I'll find it.
It's Wu-Tang. It's definitely Wu-Tang.
But anyway, before that little side tangent, I'm going to go to Robert.
Genius, Jizza. It was Jizza.
Okay, so
Robert,
you want me to follow that nonsense that you were just spouting? What?
Yes, follow the nonsense, because you've got all sorts of this. And we've talked in the past about you going to this island and the chakras and all that stuff, and then you've got some takes on religion and things like that. And then we're gonna have to wind this down because we're approaching.
How did we get here?
Okay, well, like this is a traditional Mike C conversation. You start in one place and you
I didn't do it this time.
Place, and nobody knows how we got there.
I didn't do this. We should be talking about international banking if I'm the one going down rabbit holes.
Maybe.
I didn't start the pyramid shit, man.
Well, I think the most interesting thing that came out of Ancient Aliens, since that's what we're here to talk about, is the fact that all like kings throughout time have all claimed some sort of ancestorship from the gods, because that's the divine right to rule over others. Because it can't just be, hey, I'm making this shit up and you got to do what I say. It's that, hey, I got a direct line to, the guy up above and he's telling me what to do. So if you have a problem with it, take it up with that guy, not me. So it's all a big scam to not, actually get killed.
I would certainly say that religion and government are closely related at a sort of metaphysical level. Like one is an iteration of like what the best kind of person you could be is, like the rules of society are kind of the early versions of religion. And then we aspire up to like the Christian figures where you're like, this is how you should act kind of thing. So the Buddha and Christ are very, very similar in that sense, but sort of inverted.
And I would say it's an offshoot of religion, and it has become a religion again.
Yeah. It is. It never stopped being religion, but it's the rule part of religion without. And actually, there are a lot of messiahs in there, right? We have like JFK and like Trump, very messiah-like figures.
Savior figures,
savior figures in the zeitgeist. Like whether or not you, like Obama was very similar, right? So Obama and Trump are very similar figures in that the people elected him to save them, to give them a new era. So
right.
Oh shit! I should plug my stuff because it's all about kings.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Your new 7-hour concept album has a entire hour-long track devoted to kings, and you've got a butt rock track that has Lord of the Rings mashup. You've got it's really good. It's quite interesting. So Mechanical Dream Revolution, we'll have a link to that on the show notes page, of course.
Yeah, it's just like I get into the democracies, right? Because like democracy is really just a way for the ruling class to insulate itself against accountability and responsibility for its actions.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. There was sorry to cut you off. There was a question in the Tom Woods group recently. Like, there's this Churchill quote. Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the other ones that have been tried from time to time.
fucking Churchill.
And the guy posing the quote said, what do you think would be better? And I said, Somali warlords. And I literally mean it, because democracy gives this cover, this milieu of you are actually a participant in this thing and you have a say, and it quells any real significant
it is democracy.
It's a steam valve, massive steam valve.
Right. And worse things can occur under this, because if you knew that you had a Somali warlord bearing over you, you know what to resist and who to resist. And you could work towards fighting.
If you have to. Like, there are a lot of kings throughout history, and sort of to counter Robert's point, there are a lot of kings in history that were revered that didn't necessarily need to call themselves God, because they were simply good leaders, and we elect our leaders in that sense through a much more sort of organic and natural process of simply allowing the strongest and best leader to be in charge.
Right.
When we're in crisis, and then they just provide the most amount of liberty, and then the tyrant kings don't last that long. A lot of tyrants end up with like their sort of the lords beneath them revolting and imposing a lot of limitations on their power, right? So they gotta
And
what is the Magna Carta?
My point is, the Somali warlord, at least they're honest.
Yeah, and you can just kill the one guy then, if you have to, and then there's power vacuum for a bit, but eventually it would settle down. Yeah, democracy's I'm not a huge fan of it anymore. It's exalted as this like really high ideal, but the movie did get into the war effort briefly. I thought you guys would jump on that. I honestly thought you guys would hate this movie. I thought you would hate this movie.
I'm gonna hate the movie because of the glorification of the war and I guess
you can't avoid it. No, I just thought
George has.
I thought I'd be apologizing for the movie, to be honest. I honestly thought I'd have to defend it, but because it's a great film, but it's got a bunch of I don't know, pseudo quasi socialist concepts in it, but they're not, right? You can paint it socialist if you wanted, if you're like some
you
weird.
Could.
Yeah.
I think you could.
It's both. It's capitalist and socialist. It's people just. It's one man choosing to behave in a way that is better than most people. And the benefits of that are priceless.
Right. So. It's one man having different value scale than others. He valued people and those relationships that he built other than the other things that he wanted to do, like travel the world and whatever.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the fact that his betrothed, his newlywed wife, because events happened and they couldn't go on their honeymoon, she actually went and decorated this house to be exotic, as if they were on their honeymoon and traveling somewhere. And I thought that was
she's a good woman.
Pretty stellar move on her part.
Yeah,
and she's the one that first offers up the $2,000 to save the building and loan.
And she fixed up the house. She was a hard worker. She fixed up the house every day. And that's the thing, is investing in your home, investing in your neighborhood, investing in your city, and moving that investment out slowly, as opposed to funneling all of our resources up to the government, to Hollywood, to these massive corporations. I mean, they're detrimental to our communities, right? So I think that's the lesson that I take from it. And then, it's only by virtue of him having an idiot lose $8,000 that there's even a conflict at the end, because I think that things were finally settling, and he was finally gaining traction in the marketplace, and things were finally working out for that business. You know what I mean? Because I think they were settled, and that's why it hits him so hard, is because this thing happens at a time where he's like, okay, I can finally start just getting into a rhythm and living my life, and I don't have to worry every day about going bankrupt. And then this happens, and he's like, I'm going to jail now for all of my giving up everything I wanted to help this community and help people, and they fucked me. You know what I mean? And then it turns out, in fact, all they had to say is George Bailey was in trouble, and they started handing out money. They just passed a hat
Right.
around and got him settled like in 4 hours. I don't know. That's very touching, right?
Right. Yeah, and I thought
Oh,
that
it's
was,
huge.
that was really nice, and I take it that's why you guys both were wailing like little babies at the end here.
I was wailing like a baby throughout, like the entire second half of the movie.
Yeah. Oh wow.
There's all kinds of moments that,
Oh,
that
because
hit
because
me.
she didn't have kids, right? For like
Yeah.
became a spinster. Like after his brother's death, he finds out the even worse thing, that the woman he loved became a spinster, which is apparently a fate worse than death. I love the like I don't know what the standards of that time. Like that's hilarious to me.
Yeah, and
All
then
right, they plunging you into silence.
I think you've said that before on this show.
Yeah, I have a tendency.
Well, unless you guys have any other points, we should get into the final summary and review portion here.
No, I've gone through my notes. I'm sure Mike could go for a couple more hours, though.
Yeah, if we had that kind of time, maybe on a bonus episode. And we actually, in the pre-show, everyone, we were talking about the potential for doing a MSTK3 style, where we are actually watching a movie with the audience making commentary as it's happening, and that would be on the Twitch platform, which maybe we'll get in place after the new year. So we'll be looking forward to that as a possibility.
Yeah, that could be really fun.
So yeah, Mike, any final notes before we get into summary review, or do you want to just kick off summary review and give us a score on this bad boy?
Yeah, I don't know, 10 out of 10, I guess. I don't know. I don't even know. There are 9 out of 10, I think, because there are a couple things that irk me, like the plot contrivance of Bailey. But I like if you could move that rant I said about all those things about the essence of the film just right to this, in post or something, that'd be ideal for me, because I think I said it already. What I like about it, it's about investment, and it's about the value that is not necessarily monetary or monetizable. That like people are similar to commodities, but there's a this sort of ether in us that isn't quite the same. So sometimes it's okay to like not be a hard ass about stuff and just see if that nurturing can help people give back eventually. But I mean, Potter's not wrong. You shouldn't just let people, walk all over you or take a loan that they can't pay back and stuff like that. But it doesn't really get too deep into that. So yeah, and man's not poor if he has friends. It's not a bad way to say it.
All right, well done. So 9 out of 10 from you. Robert, we'll go to you, sir.
Well, this movie is barely a Christmas movie. It's I got a couple of scenes that take place on Christmas, but like we said, that's just in the climax of the film. The first over 3/4 of it is just George Bailey's life, and it really is just a story about his life strategy and how it pays off for him in the end, and how Potter has a different life strategy. I mean, maybe he just doesn't have the charisma. I mean, one of the problems for me, just a little bit, that doesn't keeps it from being perfect. I mean, there are a couple of different things, but for me, the fact that George Bailey is kind of like a Gary Stu, like the male version of a Mary Sue, in that everybody just likes him. I mean, other than Potter, he could yell at people and scream at people and do all kinds of like non-nice things, but ultimately everybody likes him. And I could see why. I mean, I liked him, but I don't know. It was almost, it's like that 50s Leave It to Beaver style where everybody knows everybody and everybody talks to everybody and everybody knows everybody else's business. And that's the kind of community that's kind of alien to people these days. Like, I don't know my neighbors or what they're doing or what's happening to them, but I guess if we were in the 1950s middle America, I would. But man, this movie just hits you so good. It takes its time, and it really builds up this attraction and just thing about these characters. And so that when the emotional moments come, man, they hit me really, really hard. It's just so good. from a technical standpoint, there were a few scenes where I was like, "What's happening? Why? What are you doing, Capra?" I can remember in the bank scene when the uncle has to like try and put the money in the newspaper and give it to Potter, and there's like watching a YouTube video with those quick cuts because there were like it's like 4 times to stitch together, all from the same perspective. Like they couldn't do the scene in one take. And that happened a couple times in the film. And it was just weird. I mean, from a technical standpoint, it's like, what are these actors incapable of doing a single take? I don't know. But man, this is my favorite. This is my favorite like holiday movie now. It's so good. It holds up. It made in 1946. If the movies today took the time to develop characters like this, they'd be so much better. And it's still not perfect. I mean, I could see it from, the whole socialism, capitalism angle too. And I wish that was a little bit better, but I guess you got to have a villain of some kind. Anyway, it's got to be one of my highest rated movies of all time. I don't know if it's a perfect 10, but it's like a 9.2. It's really, really, really freaking good.
Wow. Totally blown away by this. And
Robert likes a movie.
I like lots of movies.
All right. Well, thank you guys for the high praise and the great conversation. And I'm going to echo a lot of your opinions. So like I said at the open, this is probably going to be just 3 guys agreeing with each other. This is a really good movie. And I think that Jimmy Stewart does have a lot of aw shucks charisma, not only as George Bailey, but in many of his other roles. And I think that's just kind of part of him as an actor. And he was very likable. He was in many films and lots of Hitchcock and Westerns and other things as well. And I think that he just kind of has that aura about him. And so he was the perfect guy to play this character. Because you're right, he did do some pretty crazy stuff. He yelled at people and he was somewhat violent and shaking people, and people still liked him. Like they didn't really hold it against him. So, it worked out. I think that the lessons are pretty good, and it does have that Christmas feel. And especially with the snow, which they won a Technical Academy Award for, because that was not actual snow. They shot the film in the heat of the summer. So you can see.
Oh, and they just used CGI.
No, it was actual.
That was CGI.
Yeah. Attack of the Clones. I forget what it was that they used, but it was something it was the first time ever it was tried, and it worked really well, and they won an award for it just for the snow effect.
Well, that's cool.
The same stuff they used in Gremlins?
Probably.
Was the Gremlins snow good? I thought it was bad.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad.
I haven't listened to that episode.
If only
yet.
Gremlins could have come out after It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know.
Yeah, it might have been better. We didn't really score Gremlins that high, but the guest we had, Rocky, he really liked it. He said it was the most Christmas movie of all time, even more Christmas than Die Hard, and that was the discussion.
He called it the best Christmas movie of all time.
Yeah. But Robert, you have a new one, and it's this one.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to throw a 9 down as well. So 9's around 9.2 out of Robert.
9.16. No, 9.6 now. no, sorry, 9.06. I think is now the average.
Yeah. You got to get your Canadian calculator, do the proper conversion, get it into Celsius and all that. But anyway, this was a really good discussion, and I appreciate Mike, you coming on. You always do bring the heat, and I tried to take a little bit of the nuance and take us down a side angle there for a little bit, but I knew you'd be game for that. And what else did I want to say about this? That's probably good for now. So this is episode 103 of the Last Nighters. You can find the show notes and more at lastnighter.com/103. Also support us on Patreon, lastnighter.com/Patreon. And you can find this on the Launchpad Media. Now, also on Launchpad Media is Blast Off with Johnny Rocket and Raylene Lightheart. Raylene was our guest for The Karate Kid a few months ago, and we had a great discussion with her. She is very easygoing, easy to talk to, very good personality on the mic, and we really had a fun discussion. And we're going to have her back again next week for a New Year's Eve inspired film, When Harry Met Sally, with the great Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan. So that should be a good discussion, I think. I'm looking forward to it.
You gotta get some
Raylene's
Stephen-
awesome. I'm looking forward to
Stefan
talking to her.
Molyneux needs. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Who's saying?
Steph, what?
Oh, Stefan Molyneux needs to join you guys for that one and all of his sexual marketplace value rhetoric. He's
Oh,
quite
maybe-
harsh.
Maybe we will make some reference to that, because doesn't Billy Crystal kind of like harp on that kind of concept?
Yeah, no, that's I don't know. I think Stefan is very harsh about those ideas. Like these guys, there's not a lot of romance, and there's like I understand that you need to limit romance, but it's not like it's an asymptote. You don't want to get to zero romance when you're talking about men and women. But yeah, no, men and women can't be friends, I think, is what Billy Crystal says to her while they're you should probably save this for the
I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while, so it's kind of that's coming back to me. Yeah,
it was part of my upbringing, so I yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Robert, as you were saying, Raylene is great, and so that'll be a lot of fun. So join us next week. And I don't know. I guess
Name of the show?
The Last Nighters, and she's on Blast Off with Johnny Rocket. So that'll be a lot of fun. And this is episode 103 of this show, and we wish you guys a Merry Christmas. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back for the New Year's. We'll say goodnight from last night.
Take care of each other.
Yeah, that looks good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and we're
Feels
actually
good.
continuing on the Actual Anarchy podcast for just a moment here, before Robert is going to have to take off, and Mike, you and I can hang out for a little bit longer in the Kathleen Turner Overdrive. If you're game, I'm game.
Sure.
For, at least for a little while. I know you said you were tired, and I'm tired. But are there any more racy things that you guys want to bring up, for the Actual Anarchy audience?
I don't know.
Before we
I got some notes, little notes, like the Hey Brainless I wrote down, because of the whole pickup artist thing. But like you talk about, I'm not sure what the concept is, but like walking. He goes to Violet and he's like, "Oh, I want to walk on the grass in your bare feet and look up at the moonlight and eat crickets and all this shit." And she's like, what are you talking about? I want soap and water and champagne and strawberries, and I want to be taken care of. Like, what are you, a lunatic? Right? And so they have completely different or what they value there are completely different in that romance, right? And so that's just kind of like a consumer choice. I'm not sure what the relationship with the broad concept that envelops both those things is, but
yeah, he's an adventure seeker and he wants to experience things, and she's a comfort seeker and she wants to be pampered.
yeah. And what is that concept though, where like I'd rather have a Starbucks than a Tim Hortons or vice versa? They could both go fuck themselves, but anyway.
Well, it just comes down to like preferences, right? Like,
yeah, just a consumer choice. Yeah, just consumer preference. But I thought there might be like some string of $5 words attached to it by Rothbard or Hayek or something.
Could be. I know Daniel's got some of those.
Selma Hayek, by the way, not Frederick.
Yes, yeah, we gotta get the right Hayek there.
Yeah. What else we got? Oh, chain on the ice. So the boys are running towards Harry, who's in the ice, and they immediately say, "Form a chain," right? Which is what you're supposed to do when somebody's falling on ice. You spread your body out on the ground and you form a chain so that you can link back to the shore without breaking more ice as you get closer, right? That's the danger of trying to rescue somebody in ice. And I thought it was interesting that these boys knew to do that, because I think most of them nowadays would just film it and broadcast it to the internet.
Probably.
Go, whoa, oh shit, bro.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, I mean, there is, and I'm not saying like the whole like, totally fascistly indoctrinate children, but like Baden Powell style scouts is maybe a good idea. Like if the education system was worth its salt, we'd all know first aid, right?
Yeah, well, I don't
That
think.
seems pretty reasonable considering how much money we pay for it.
Yeah, well, I don't think
Pretty
the
terrible product.
is there to make us functional adults.
That's for damn sure. Did you feel prepped coming out of high school? I don't think so.
The world was a time bomb.
Yeah, well, I think this is a racy enough conversation, and
Fuck the government, I guess, is the governance. I say government when I'm in a chat so that they don't go back when they're able to parse all of this information and decide my behavior is inappropriate and I need to be kept an eye on, or even worse.
yeah, your Sesame Street score is getting marked down right now.
Yeah. Oh, there's a fun one. Sesame Street's like, oh wait, I should say this for the Kathleen Turner Overdrive.
The Bert and Ernie?
No, yeah, the Bert and Ernie. Actually, another thing, I didn't even think about Bert and Ernie. So it's crazy that they went, they were able to go back in time and name it after those characters on Sesame Street.
Yeah. Pretty crazy, huh?
Yeah, that's some nice shtick. Cab driver and a cop, and they're like weird friends, always hanging out.
Oh, let's talk about the cop when Bailey didn't exist, and
He was more of an asshole, or
Bailey's running away from him, and he just starts shooting wildly into the crowd.
well, that's what you do.
Yeah, that is how you get somebody to
Like,
stop
yeah,
running, right?
Like he's a UPS driver.
Yeah, if they take a hostage, just go for the good wound, like in Speed.
Yeah, it was terrible. That part was terrible. But when Bailey did exist, he seemed like a much nicer guy, the cop.
Okay, so that's the overwhelming theme, though, is that the people in his lives were better people for having known him.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's
Yes.
like, and it's about investing in people and all that shit, right? Like, yeah, even Martini was just a better person because he was showed kindness, right? So no, those ideas get dangerous if we start weaponizing them and forcing people to share the way that we want them to. But it's not a bad idea. Yeah.
It is a decent idea in that people respond to how well you treat them, and they.
Yeah. Well, you get more flies with honey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kindness begets kindness.
Yeah, that's what concerns me about the politics of this era is because, like, okay, love trumps hate. Well, you're hitting me with that sign, like, this Trumpian sort of era where, like, every day in the left media is 2 minutes of hate. Like, I don't have to like Trump or not like Trump. I can see that everybody is drummed up into a frenzy, and then they just have to point this mob of people at a target, and then they go and attack it. It's like 1984.
Yeah, and it's very ironic because, yeah, you're right. They are saying they're being loving and inclusive and caring and all these things, but they're demonstrating and acting and behaving in such ways that are much worse than even what they accuse Trump of being and doing.
Yeah, it's an era, and it's pretty bad up here actually. But and this whole like tolerance as the striking edge of oppression is just so hard to explain to people. You sound like a lunatic because you can't meme it. Well, you can kind of meme it, but the guy already needs to be sort of right wing or alt right to understand the meme. But yeah, they're yelling tolerance at you and telling you to shut up.
Right. Yeah. They're tolerantly punching you.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not tolerant enough.
Or you're not tolerant the way that person's certainly not tolerating me, and I get called a Nazi or a cuck all the time anyway. So I don't know.
Yeah,
they're half right.
Kindness begets kindness. That's the theme of this Christmas episode of the Actual Anarchy podcast, which is episode 160 of the show. And I think you just call it here. Mike, we'll have you back on sometime in the future, hopefully Stargate or something else. You're always a great conversation, and we'll get into some Kathleen Turner Overdrive. Available for Patreon supporters. Hit us up at lastnighter.com/Patreon or actualanarchy.com/Patreon. They go to the same place. Either way, whichever one you want to use. Check out Mike at the link on our show notes page and also on SoundCloud, Mechanical Dream Revolution. Sorry. The music is at Mechanical Dream Revolution. Concept album, 7 hours long. It's quite good. And check it out. Check it out, everyone. We'll be back next week for the New Year's When Harry Met Sally with the great, wondrous Raylene Lightheart. And maximum freedom, everyone. Merry Christmas.
The Chipmunks. CHIPMUNK. We're the Chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day. Do 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 Do-do-do-do.